Hey, good morning. My name is Gary Matsuoka, and we're here at Laguna Hills Nursery in Santa Ana. It's a Saturday morning, kind of a humid one here toward the end of August, and today's class is on questions and answers. So we'll get started with the audience questions. Anybody? Okay.
When should you
You can hold it.
when should you top a orange tree, and how far should you top it? Because you can't get the oranges if it goes too high.
Right. So generally we do the heaviest pruning in winter, because whenever you cut a tree heavily and you expose leaves that have never seen the sun, then they tend to burn if it's say above 80 degrees. So it's nice to do the heavy pruning in winter, and you'll be sacrificing a little bit of the crop, not a whole lot. However, if you drive through all the groves in the Central Valley, they're shearing them most of the year. It's real interesting. They have these trucks that just drive through the grove, and they have saws on two sides of them, and it kind of just shears them, bevels them, so that the sunlight hits the entire tree. And they do that all summer, so they're going to lose a few fruit by that, but just to keep them shaped up so they don't shade themselves any time of the year you want. But yeah, if you're cutting them down in height, probably best in winter before they bloom. Yes.
I have a sour cherry tree that I think the root has hit a big rock, so it's not dead yet. But I was wondering if I should rescue it now, or it's just kind of drying quite a bit.
So this is supposed to be a fruit tree?
Yeah.
Do you ever get any fruit on it?
Well, it was kind of new. Last year we had like 5 or 6, and I expected it to get a lot more, but
yeah, we've grown sour cherries for quite a few years, never seen them. And once they're down here and they go through winter here, we've never seen them produce a thing. So there's not much hope. They need definitely more winter than we get here.
So not a good fit.
Yeah, not worth keeping. I mean, if they don't have the winter, they barely wake up. They grow a few inches, and that's about it. Because they need that winter to not only bloom, but to promote growth. So. Yes.
I got a picture of mine. Or some pictures. I got a sapodilla tree, and it was growing in the nursery in dappled shade and in some wood chips. So I got it. I brought it home. I repotted it in top pot. But I heard they like sun, but every time I give them sun, it seems to burn the leaves. And then I keep putting back in shade, and then he doesn't grow. So I'm not sure what to do.
Well, it's better to get him in the sun. You can, since it's not real big at the moment, you can put them next to a large object that shades them part of the day. So, get them used to more and more sun. I mean, most plants are strong enough that if you just put them out in sun and they just burn to a crisp, it doesn't kill them. They just put out a new set of leaves that are better adapted. So wherever the leaves grew initially, if they grew in the shade, they're not used to the sun. If they grow in the sun, then they're used to the sun. So it's, you can just sacrifice all the leaves it has right now and just put them in the sun and leave it there. And the new growth will be adapted. You might lose a lot of the older leaves, but it'll adapt quickly, or you can adapt it slowly. The leaves have to get, what they find is if it's in the sun, it's got thicker leaves, more cells thick. And if it's in the shade, it's a bigger leaf with thinner leaves to capture more light. So they do make a different leaf when they're wherever they grow. So.
Thank you.
I heard your lecture on strawberries on YouTube, and you were talking about the bare root plants that you get from the growers and how you have to chop them down and put them in the small pots. I was wondering, is there any possibility of getting the bare root plant from you, and then not having it the root chopped, we put it in a bag like you were suggesting, and growing it that way.
Yeah, we'll see what we can do this fall. So the best time to plant them is sometime in early to mid fall. We're having to find another supplier. The suppliers we're using all seem to want to sell by volume. It's like my original supplier, which we loved. We used them for at least 10 years. They told us minimum order now is 10,000 plants, which we might sell in 5 years. So we've kind of given up on them. And then they told us which distributor they sell to that they would sell to us. And their minimum is 1,500 plants, which is still a lot. And we tend to throw away more of those than actually sell. So we might start using suppliers that sell 100 at a time. It'll be higher price, but they'll be in better shape when we sell them. So try us around November and see if we have some. Yeah, we should have some. And we may not be able to get the best varieties. That's the problem from the suppliers that are not our original ones. The original ones, they grew everything. They were the biggest commercial supplier for the United States, but apparently we're too small a consumer to buy from them.
So around November, you will sell the bare root. You will not.
It's up to the supplier if they have them. So one of the problems is it's got to be cool where they're at. Now, our original supplier was in the foothills of the Sierras. So they said it was already cold by November. We have the supplier we may end up using is in Arkansas. And sometimes they don't get cold until January. They usually get cold in November. But some years, we have to wait for them to get their stock out of the ground because the weather down there can be quite variable. Well, like anywhere. Some years they don't get cold in the winter. Last year they got some, but it depends on the weather in Arkansas. Yes.
What's the general rule for watering fruit trees? Do we water them when they have fruit or when they have the flowers? I hear all different types. Does it depend on the fruit tree?
It really doesn't depend on the fruit tree. I mean, all plants like ample water. There's no such thing in nature as overwatering unless you're underwater. If you have a hurricane that dumps 30 inches of rain and you're underwater for a month, that might be a problem. But overwatering is a term that was invented because plants that wholesale nurseries grow rot because of the compost that's in their root system. Mm-hmm. And if there's no compost in the root system, like the plants we grow, you can water them as much as you want. Now, if you want to, don't want to overdo the water, the main theme of growing production plants is while they're producing a crop, especially around the time of bloom and fruit set, and then when fruit is sizing up, keep the ground moist throughout the root system. And now, the root system on most fruit trees is in the top foot to foot and a half. So what farmers used to do is they would walk around with a piece of rebar with, metal that's about this thick, but you can use a wood dowel this thick or anything about this thick between pencil and finger thickness. And if you can push in the ground a foot to foot and a half, the soil is moist that deep. That's the best check for a homeowner. Some orchards use a thing they install in the ground that tells moisture. Do not use the moisture meters. They are so inaccurate. Well, they'll tell you it's wet until it's dead. So, that's fine for an indoor plant. Indoor plants can go totally dry. There's no sun in the house. It's not stressful in the house. They can go totally dry. You get any plant outdoors to go totally dry and it's 90 degrees that day, it is in trouble. So the stick test is by far, that's what agriculture used for generations until, now they use computers and all these other things. But that is definitely a good test. If you can push it down a foot to foot and a half, your watering is right on target. Now, the frequency of watering has been changing over the years. So 2 generations ago is once a week. You open the floodgates, flooded your field. A week later, you do the same thing. And essentially, it was really, really wet for 3 days and really dry for 3 days. And one day it was fine. So they went to, with the modern technology, drip systems, they've been going, they say a lot of the orchards do 2 hours of drip irrigation every 2 days. But they tested, this last year, we got research from both Brazil and Florida saying that if you water 3 times a day, the plants look even better every day. Same amount of water as the once a week watering, actually it's less, because once a week you got to overwater to keep it alive the rest of the week. But they said, 3 times a day, significantly better production, better looking plants than once every 2 days. So a lot of the orchards are switching. Orchard I walk through just about every day, they're watering almost every day now, because they used to water a lot less than that, because everybody's been told over the years, the less frequently and deeply irrigate, the better the plant will be. Well, none of that's true. None of that's true. They get deeper roots, better production when you keep the moisture as even as you can, not if you let it dry out and watered heavily. They didn't get deeper roots that way.
And is there any specific time of the day that, so like if it's as hot as it gets that during the day, that's fine?
So what goes on is they said leaves of a plant evaporate more water more quickly than if it was just on the ground. So foliage of a plant, because it's got air on all sides, they said it can evaporate water more quickly than water just sitting on the ground. But if it evaporates off the ground, it won't evaporate from the leaves. So they said it's almost a wash whenever you water, because if it's evaporating off the ground, the leaves don't evaporate any. So, like grass lawns evaporate much more water than a pond does, because they have so much more surface area. And if you water a grass lawn in the middle of the day when it's real hot, the water may evaporate before it goes in the ground, but the grass won't be using any at that time. So they said it's kind of a wash. The only thing you have to watch out for, if you have sprinkler irrigation, there is more air movement in the afternoons that might blow it off target. That's about it. So.
I have 2 questions.
Mhm.
One's going to be about Poana, and the other one is about, I followed your directions on watering my lawn, and it looks really good now. But I have spots where it's lower in some spots and higher. What do I use to fill that part of the lawn to make it more level?
Okay. Golf courses use sand.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, you can spread, they said 1/4 inch of sand every week, and the grass will keep up with that. I've done 1 inch all at one time, and it was fine. The grass just grows through it, no problem.
And then when should I put a preventative for Poana?
That would be late September. You got to hit it right when we get cooler nights. Some years it happens in September. Some years it doesn't happen until November. But sometime in that, there are, and we'll probably bring him in soon, preventive weed preventers that work for about 2 months at a time. So if you put it on toward the end of September, that should cover you, maybe.
Do I reapply it later?
Yeah, well, there's different products out there. You'll have to see what the product says. But most of them say in fall. When the nights get perceptibly cooler, that's when they start coming up. So.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay, so these are questions from the emails. Let's see. From Ken, I mix my own permanent potting media using peat, sand, perlite, and pumice when I can get it to grow my fruit trees in containers. My question pertains to the best size of the perlite to use. I believe I've heard you say in one of your classes that it is best to use chunkier rather than finer grains of perlite. Accordingly, I've been using sizes 3 and 4 that are 1/2 to 3/4 inches in size. This has made my media very airy, but I noticed that the smaller components of my media will not fully fill in the large gaps between the pumice nugget. My containers are full and fairly large air gaps, and I'm concerned that the roots are not easily making or maintaining contact with the media. I often see and hear on other YouTube channels that you should pat down soil to eliminate air pockets in containers. Are my concerns unfounded, or should I use smaller grades of perlite?
Did he say where he's from, or is he local, or is he? Didn't say.
It doesn't say.
Okay. So if you have a medium or potting soil that you've made, the size of the grains, the bigger it is, the more air gaps you have. Generally, the more air gaps you have, the less water the medium holds, but the more air, and air is what makes things vigorous. That's why a lot of hydroponic growers use clay pellets, because air gaps are huge. And you get real fast, you get much more vigorous, faster growth, the more air you have. But the downside of that is, of course, less moisture retained, so you'd have to water more frequently. Now, if you've got automatic watering system, then there's no problem. You just make big air gaps and you're fine with that. Water every few hours on a hot day. But if you need to hold more moisture, you need the particles to be smaller. I mean, you can just throw real dirt in with the soil, and that'll help fill the gaps. This is what my dad used to grow plants back in the 1950s, was just a sandy soil, which doesn't breathe as well as things with perlite or pumice in them. So that, peat moss, which is one of the ingredients you mentioned, is certainly one of the things that holds water really well, even a little better than this. So you can up the peat in there, or you can add a little actual soil that has a little bit of clay in it. Since these are smaller particles, they'll hold more water than the coarser particles. It's just what you want. I mean, if you want faster growth, bigger area pieces, if you want more water retention, you add more smaller things. Vermiculite is pop clay, and it'll hold a lot of water. You have to be careful with the vermiculite. We know if we go much more than 10%, everything gets really gummy in there. Like no air movement at all, it just gets real slimy. So we have to watch vermiculite content. Keep it on the low side, but that also holds a lot of water. And when they recommend pounding the soil to get the air pockets out, you don't want to do that. Air is one of the things that the soil needs to provide for the roots. Airflow to the roots is highly important to keep them healthy. And generally, a sandy soil has pretty nice airflow. So, versus clay that doesn't have much. Yes, in the back.
If you have raised beds in your garden and you fill them up with waste products, how do you turn those into soil?
You can't turn waste products into soil.
Well, I mean, waste products in terms of wood products that they use in compost and stuff. But I make my own compost and I don't use wood. But I was thinking that you could take, in Elliot Coleman's book, he talked about real soil and that kind of thing. And he used, I was thinking about putting sand into it. I have all this sand from a stucco job on my house.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was thinking about putting bentonite in as a clay product. Would that seem reasonable?
Yeah, you just have to fool around with it and see how much bentonite will work before it totally gums it up.
I know that. Yeah. Yeah, because I use bentonite in my pottery business as a clay, as a substance I use. But I was just wondering, I was just want to turn that compost into more like a real soil instead of having to pay to take it all out and put new stuff in.
Well, compost is not soil at all. It's
it's
supposed to
not.
be a layer of. So in nature, soil is 99.1% mineral below the surface of the soil, and there's supposed to be 5 inches of organic mulch above the soil, 5 inches deep. So that's how nature's set up. Organic up here, mineral down here. The 0.9% that's organic down here supposedly is just dead roots from the plants. But there's no way for organic matter to get in the ground in nature. Now, if you have a boggy area and you got a lot of reeds growing in a bog, reeds and grasses can actually grow in decomposing reeds. It's like peat. They can actually grow in that, but nothing permanent can really grow in it. It doesn't breathe at all, the organic matter, when it's in a bog situation. So you have to be careful with those. University of California did run an article saying that a lot of the soils around the delta region of the Central Valley have a really high organic matter because it's reclaimed bogland. And they said they can only grow annual crops in it, and they have to monitor their watering very carefully because everything tends to rot in there. So that's what happens when you have organic matter turning into into soil. It doesn't work as well as real dirt does. So that's it.
What about the notion with compost pits that if you throw nitrogen fertilizer into the weeds, it'll burn up the seed, they won't germinate? Have you heard that one?
I didn't understand.
That if you use high nitrogen fertilizer, the weeds won't germinate in your compost pit?
I hadn't heard that one. I don't know.
I only heard it once. Yeah.
Okay, so question from Chris from the email. In Southern California, what is the correct feeding schedule for stone fruit and blueberry, blackberry, raspberry? All are on their 2nd year.
That was the fertilizer schedule?
Yes.
Well, generally, we don't feed them that much once they're in production mode. A lot of times, just a good organic mulch on top of the ground is fine for most stone fruit. I can't think of one that I would fertilize a lot. Usually when I grow stone fruit, I fertilize the first year, and then the subsequent years, if there's dead leaves on the ground below the trees, I don't usually do much. You can watch your foliage and see if it turns reddish or pale green in the summer. If it does, it's needing some nitrogen. But other than that, I don't do much on any of the plants that you had mentioned, the raspberries, blackberries. Well, blueberries, you got to keep it acidic. So a lot of times we're throwing either sulfate ammonia on there or something with sulfur and to keep it acidic. And generally you do that when they bloom and until about mid-year, when they usually finish growing by about midsummer. So those are the months you have to watch out and make sure. Blueberries are more touchy with the pH, so you have to make sure the leaves stay dark green. If not, up the sulfur, apply the sulfur or ammonium sulfate to make it more acidic. So.
2 questions. Does coffee provide acidity for the plant? That's question 1. Question 2, I have a lot of chickens, so I use chicken manure. Of course, after it's dried, so it's not wet.
Mm-hmm.
And I just kind of, throughout the year, I just kind of put it around my fruit trees. Is that okay?
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, coffee grounds, anything organic is good fertilizer. I've read, though, that it's not highly acidic because the acids came out in the coffee. But it's still good for anything. The chicken manure is great. we sell a lot of chicken manure nowadays because it's cheaper than the other fertilizers. And there's a lot of farms that have said we don't have to buy fertilizer, we raise chickens. So chicken manure is awful good. We don't know the exact contents of it. It should be in the ballpark of, since it can support a chicken's life, which essentially they need the same minerals as plants. It should have just about everything that a plant needs in it. When it first comes out of a chicken, it's really hot, a lot of ammonia, so you have to be a little careful if you have a lot of chickens and it's fresh. But once it sits around for a couple of weeks, it's not that potent anymore. But a lot of the books I've read say that chickens are birds' poop, almost pure chemical fertilizer. So.
Next question from John. I have a banana pup and an avocado tree to plant. Due to the limited space, one of the two needs to be planted almost directly over PVC irrigation lines buried 9 inches deep. Which of the two would you choose, concerned about roots?
Well, if the irrigation line is 18 inches below the surface of the soil, it's below what's going to reach it.
Oh, he's at 9 inches.
Huh?
He's at 9 inches.
9 inches. That's right in the root zone. Any of those plants will bust it up. It's better to get it. So the standards that California is supposed to follow is 18 inches below the surface because roots don't go down any further than usually a foot. If it's 9 inches, your roots are going to find it. The bananas usually push the soil around more than an avocado, but any of those plants can bust that pipe. So you have to be careful with that.
What if he mounds the avocado like a foot above?
Pardon?
What if he mounds the avocado tree like a foot
Well, either
above?
one. If you mound the soil up above that area, because both are good for mounding. Bananas mound well, and avocados like to be mounded. So you can put an extra, say, 6 or 8 inches of dirt above the ground and plant them in that. That'll keep the roots higher. Now, bananas, you usually have to dig more around bananas. So the avocado might be safer in this case, especially if you raise the level of the soil a bit. I find decomposed granite to be one of the best things to raise dirt with because it doesn't move with water that easily. And avocados love decomposed granite. So that might be my choice rather than bananas, which you're always digging them out constantly. So.
From Janine, this is a photo of one of the leaves on my lemon tree. What is it? What can I do to get rid of it? I've also recently seen little black bugs on the new young leaves. I've sprayed with neem oil and then tried washing the plant with a strong stream of water. Here's a picture.
Okay, the photo, I looked at this before the class started. It's a nice green leaf with pure white patches in the leaves. So that generally would mean that that plant ran out of water and those parts of the leaves that are just white patches just totally dried up. And over time they'll turn brownish or tannish, but that's a sign of just totally ran out of water all at once. That's usually what that means. Now, the other part of the question was?
Black bugs.
If it's little black bugs on new growth, that's probably aphids. Aphids and or psyllids, which are very similar. Water and the neem oil, fine.
Sorry, with all the questions I have an avocado tree that it was not big. It was just about this size. And it's about 3 years old, maybe 2 years old. And I've noticed as it gets, instead of getting taller, it's just very limp. What is the problem? I can't figure it out.
Bought it from the wrong company.
So it's just not a good
Species.
When it's limp and it doesn't grow, it doesn't have roots. The root system is kind of failing on it. Because when we grow avocados, we get them we got some in March this year that were this tall. Now most of them are this tall. By fall, they should be this tall. And by next year, they should be about 10 foot tall. So that's what we see on a healthy avocado. If it doesn't grow, we know it's not, the roots are bad. And you can't find good avocados anywhere that would meet our standards of an avocado tree.
So just pull it out?
Yeah,
I feel
I'd
bad.
give up on it. I mean, when I used to grow avocados I got from other growers, I would put them in the ground. They would sit there and maybe grow a few inches within a few years, and they might put a few fruit on, and that was it. After 5 years, I would just tear them out, start over, and go, okay, this thing's not doing anything. And get another one. The same thing would happen. Another 5 years, I'd wait for the thing to grow and never grow. And I kept doing that over and over until we started growing our own avocados. We got plants that were grafted by a large company that does a lot of avocados. We got them when they're really tiny, put them in our soil to begin with. 3 months later, they've grown 2 foot. 3 months after that, another 2 foot. 3 months after that, another 2 foot. They just keep on growing. If the root system's good, they just keep growing. I mean, we've got one out there right now that we've had for almost a year and a half that's 12 foot tall.
Ooh.
So, and we expect them, most of the varieties fruit on their second year. Not all of them, but most of them can. And if we don't get that, then we're saying, okay, no use wasting time on this one. So
your recommendation for avocado is what you have up there too, 5-inch organic, and the rest just
Sandy soil.
sandy
Mhm.
soil.
well, any plant, this is how nature is set up.
Uh-huh.
There is no organic matter buried in the ground naturally. Occasionally, if there's a landslide, it'll happen, but in nature, there's no way that things get buried. And and the problem we have is that they make the most of the compost made out of ground up tree. Where in nature do trees get ground up? I mean, that's so unnatural. I think that's the worst mold. There's no nutrition in a ground up tree. It's all cellulose. Dead leaves is what the plants want around them, not dead ground up wood or bark. Dead leaves is nature's mulch. So
That kind of leads into my question. I've seen in permaculture terms, they talk about chop and drop, basically. Like you've got in my particular garden, we've got some corn stalks. They've kind of run their course, and I'm thinking I should just pull them out of the ground, root and all, and just drop them into the rows and let them decompose. Instead of the alternative would be take them to a compost pile, grind them up, and process them basically.
yeah, chop and drop is what nature does. It's not pretty sometimes, but it's real. It is natural because things don't get chopped up in nature. So yeah, the farmer, this new generation of farmers is being taught what they're supposed to do, and it's going to be hard to get all the new information into a large farm because they're not used to doing that kind of stuff. But some of the smaller farms have already succeeded, or they said they grow rice, pull it out after they harvest, they just lay it back on the ground. Grow oats in the rice waste. Oats come up, do their thing. They just lay them on the ground and grow rice in there again. So now grass crops are one of the few crops to be grown in the same soil over and over and over. Most farm crops, you can't do the same thing for at least 3 years, 4 years.
Next question from Sandra. A few of my citrus trees have been getting leaf miner. I have cut them back, but they seem to continue to attack the leaves. What is the best way to get rid of them?
So commercially, leaf miners on citrus, leaf miners are fairly new in California. They arrived around 25 years ago. And they only attack new leaves, and they do their work between June. So far, we've seen June through November, maybe even into December. And then January through June, we see nothing. So this is their season, June through November, and every single new leaf, it's a little tiny moth that flies around. They lay eggs in the new leaves, and the larvae make tunnels inside the leaf that look like a trail. What's a trail of poop that you're seeing, and that makes the leaves just warp around the damage. They will make a cocoon by rolling one of the edges over. The cocoon's about the size of a grain of rice, so it's really small. But that citrus leaf miner, when they first came to California about 25 years ago, the damage was severe. I mean, we were losing entire branches on trees, on younger trees. They don't like the mature growth, but the younger trees were just getting messed up. And the product we use to control it was a combination of spinosad and a wetting agent. So spinosad is an organic product made by a bacteria that's found in rum when they make rum, and it kills pretty much any chewing insect, and it goes into the leaf. We need the spreader sticker to make it stick to the waxy growth of citrus. If you don't add that, it just beads up and won't cover the leaf well. So we were doing this combination. It happens to be 2 ounces of this and 2 teaspoons of this in a gallon of water. And if we did it every 2 weeks, we saw no damage at all. That's what we wanted when we were selling citrus, because we didn't want any damage showing. Now, for a homeowner, you don't have to be perfect. If you spray this once around July, you pretty much won't see much the rest of the year. Once was good enough at my house, because I had a Mexican lime, sent up new growth in the spring, totally dropped all its leaves because of the leaf miners that summer. So the next summer it leafed out, next spring it leafed out again, and we sprayed it once right when we noticed the leaf miners were on it, and it kept most of that foliage the rest of the year, even slightly damaged, but did a lot of good just for one spring. So but if you want to be perfect, you can do it over and over. Now, in the 2 decades it's been here, the Ag Department found out that a lot of the local natural predators that are here, they said 9 of them started eating this thing. So the damage isn't as bad now as it was. We're not losing entire branches. It's kind of more just foliage on the tips of the branches. Now, commercial orchards don't spray at all. They do have these traps that'll trap the male moths, not the females. The male moths are attracted to these traps, so you can see what you have, but it doesn't really do much about the female moths unless you trap your whole neighborhood. Then you can get the population of females down a bit, but generally the scent traps don't work that well, but the spray does. And we also have a product that combines spinosad and soap, which by itself will stick pretty well. This costs more than this combination. This is 7 ounces per gallon of water, whereas this is 2 ounces, and that's 2 teaspoons. So.
Thank you, we had a question for this morning in the paper, there was an article about the GDD, which is the soil temperature invented by some French guy in 1734. That it was very interesting in that if you know the temperature, you get a score. You know when to spray and when not to spray, when the fruit ripens, when it won't ripen. And they used the potato beetle as an example. That spinosad, all these chemicals don't work on the beetle.
Mm-hmm.
But if you know the temperature at the right temperature, you can kill all the larvae easily. Nature has that kind of a temperature time thing, right?
Yeah, the farmers will just call up the Ag Department because they're the ones tracking the temperature days, all that stuff. and they can tell them when is the best time to spray. But homeowners, we don't, unless you have a little weather station set up, it's harder for you to do that. But the agriculture department has stations, like how many are there? It's like 50 or 60 across California that keep track of temperature and.
Well, they said that as a gardener or a homeowner, you can get on their app. The extension has an app, and so you go on the app and you look at that number that they have, and that number relates to spray, don't spray, water, don't water, and all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
I thought it was fascinating that it's available for people, and because farmers overspray a lot of stuff all the time.
Right.
They don't really think about other people and gardeners and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And this customer, Eduardo, has 3 questions. The first one is, with raised beds, what's the optimum number of raised beds to have? Should they be placed north, south, or east, west? What should they be filled with?
The direction of the raised bed. So raised beds. So if you make a raised bed, generally we run them north-south. Now, if you want to be perfect, because if you have a raised bed going north-south, if this is east and this is west, the east side is going to get less heat than the west side. So in agriculture, they found out, like on farms where they're harvesting, this was done on grape vineyards. They said, well, the east side, if you face it exactly north-south, the east side is going to be cooler than the west side. The west side will actually ripen for the east side. So they would run the beds slightly pointed toward east. Instead of true north and south, they would run them slightly to the east, so the sun stayed on this side of the bed longer than it did on the west side. So it depends how accurate you want to be. I mean, it's, for homeowners, I don't think it's a huge deal, but the north-south is generally the way they run beds.
He also asks what they should be filled with.
Well, if it's on the ground, so if this bed is on the ground, fill it with the native soil that you have. Now, if it's really, really bad soil, see, like in Orange County, where we got this soil from, they said this is the best soil we've ever farmed on. When they grow things, they raise their beds about 18 inches, which makes it a little easier to pick. And if you're standing in the trench, and you have better drainage going downward, so the plants do better. But in Monterey County, where they grow a lot of the same crops, it's bad clay up there. So what they do there is they make the beds twice as high. So instead of 18 inches, they're 36 inches. You got beds that are this high off the ground. They have to cover them with plastic so they don't wash away. And it's just clay. And they said 36 inches of clay gives them almost the same drainage as 18 inches of sandy soil. So if you have clay soil, you got to raise the beds higher. If you have sandy soil, you don't need that height for perfect aeration and drainage from that bed. Now that's for raised beds that are attached to the ground. If you've got an elevated bed, which is, some people have asked me about this and then they didn't give me the right thing. Elevated beds are elevated off the ground. So when you have an elevated bed, you can't use sandy loam. It doesn't drain well enough when there's a bottom on the bed. So the soil on a regular raised bed, the soil below the bed will pull the excess water out of the soil above it. But when you have an elevated bed, it's just gravity, and it won't pull that much water out of this. So you've got to go to something coarser like sand, or like the potting soils we make, which have pumice, perlite, sand, peat moss in them for an elevated bed. So you have to get the definitions correct. Raised bed is on the ground, elevated bed is raised above the ground. You have to use something different in here. You can use the same thing in here, but regular dirt is cheaper. A lot cheaper than our potting soil or pure sand.
So if I've created a hedgerow out of a compost, say, oh, about, well, hedgerow size, do I want to dig that compost out of there, leave a shell, and fill it with mineral soil to plant on it? Or can I get away with using it as it is?
Well, plants' roots don't grow in compost, so they can grow in it for a short time. Some plants are more tolerant of like tomatoes can grow in a compost well. There's not many plants. Pardon?
Trees. Dig it out.
They don't like it. They don't like compost in the root zone. It's ground up dead trees next to them or dead plants.
Should I wait till it's broken down and then just dig it out and start over?
We've been waiting a long time.
Well, it's claimed it's really fast.
Yeah. But yeah, better not to grow roots in compost.
Okay, going back to the flat raised bed, my daughter has dug out all the clay, okay, and they're going to make a container to put the soil in. What should she use? She has some soil, but she dug out an awful lot of clay. So what would you add?
But it's a raised bed.
Yes.
Well, sandy loam. Yeah, I like either sandy loam or decomposed granite.
So where do you buy sandy loam?
It would be from a landscape supply or what do they call it? Then the name for the building supply company.
Yes.
So they have, if you have a construction site and they got a low spot, they need to raise it. They're not going to use compost. They're not going to use clay. They're going to use a sandy soil to fill it. Sometimes they call it fill dirt. Just look at it, make sure it's not got too many rocks in it, although rocks don't hurt plants. But sandy loam won't shrink or expand when it's wet, so that's what a builder would use. You can use pure sand, it costs a little more. And you can also use decomposed granite, which I kind of like myself because it's usually mined out of the side of a hill. This is from a side of a riverbed. And sometimes if you order sandy loam, it comes with a lot of weed seed. If you order decomposed granite, there's no weeds in there. You don't get anything growing in it for years. It's kind of neat that way.
So you mix your soil with it.
Or just use it straight.
Question 2 out of 3 from Eduardo. What's the best fertilizing schedule for mandarin? I have a clementine and a shiranui in 16-inch boxes. They're not putting on height, though. They're growing bushy rather than tall.
I'm not sure why they're growing bushy rather than tall. Anyway, for citrus, if citrus is in the ground, generally you go January through July is the fertilizer season because they're in January you want new growth, which is making flowers to form before they bloom. Usually they bloom around March or April. And then you want to keep them well fed till July. And then you want to stop because if you fertilize them in the late summer, early fall, you can induce more growth that has more flowers and get an off-season crop. Now, it doesn't hurt the plant to have an off-season crop, but the off-season crop won't be what you're used to. So a mandarin on the regular crop from the spring bloom grows in the summer, and then the cold weather in the winter actually makes it the color you want it to be, more of an orange color, and gives you the flavor you want, which is a little more acid along with the sugar. Now, if you start a fall crop, it's going to ripen the following summer, so there's no cool weather then. It'll be like you live in Hawaii or Brazil. The fruit doesn't turn orange. It gets kind of a greenish orangey color, and the flavor is sweet but bland. So if you live in the tropics, that's the fruit you get. Sweet, bland, not much color. If you live here in California and you get that winter crop, then it's got the colors and the flavors that we're used to, but it doesn't hurt the plant. You know, any orchard, they usually have a few fruits that ripen in the summer off season. That's just the way it is. Now, since you're in containers, generally you do have to feed them a little bit of nitrogen all year round in a pot, because they lose it so quickly in containers, they'll turn pale on you. And now, if they're not growing, if they're stunted, that's a whole new question. What soil are you using? Did you remove the soil it came with? And one factor we don't know is the source of the budwood that grafted that citrus originally. So one of my citrus books says that if they take the budwood, if the wholesale grower for that tree took the budwood off the top branches of a tree, it tends to be very precocious and slow growing. And if they take the same budwood off the same tree near the bottom of that same tree, it tends to be more juvenile and fast growing. So it doesn't usually fruit right away. It grows for a few years before it fruits. Whereas top of the tree, it just sits there and produces. There's no way for anyone to know where the budwood came from. University of California is the source of all the budwood, and I don't think they tell the grower exactly where the budwood comes from. So there's that unknown that it might be causing trouble.
His last question is, can strawberries grow year after year in the same pot? What about tomatoes?
Okay. Well, strawberries can grow for 3, even 4 years in the same pot. However, you don't get the same production every year. You get far less the second year. So the one advantage of getting new strawberries every year, and the biggest advantage, is that they make a lot more fruit initially. So the strawberries we get here in October have already gone through a winter where they come from. Either if we ordered from the original suppliers up in the foothills of the Sierras, or from Arkansas, they've already got their winter. So we get them in October, November. They're ready to push flowers and fruit right now. If you leave them in the same pot over winter, they'll have their winter by March of next year, and then they'll start their heavy spring production in March, where you could have started it before winter started here. So the strawberry farmers here, you notice that, like if they're in Monterey, they keep them in the ground for 3 years. Here, they always replant because the market for Orange County is Christmas. We're the only place in the United States they can have strawberries ripe by Christmas. In order to do that, you have to have a plant that's already got its winter in September or October. They not only grow them in the Sierra foothills, but as they transport them down to Southern California, they're in refrigeration. So they get their cool winter temperatures before they get planted. And as soon as they get planted here, they're in production mode like it's spring. So if you start new plants every year, now you can just take the plants you have in the pot, pull them out of the pot, put them in a plastic bag, throw them in the refrigerator. Sunset Magazine ran an article 40 years ago saying it works. You put them in the refrigerator for 2 weeks at 40 whatever degrees it is in the refrigerator, and they get their winter. Then you can put them back in pot. Might as well use fresh new soil, and you have a plant as good as if they've been coming from a colder climate. So, or they've already spent the winter here. So that's your options. Now, if you grow them in the same dirt, the second year the plants aren't as vigorous. So, you can take the plant out of the soil, put it in the refrigerator, get new soil in your pot, put them back in, and your plants will be just as good as if you bought them as a new plant.
If you're using them as ground cover in general, can you tolerate a reduced crop yield?
Well, yeah, you still get strawberries as ground cover. Of course, you get more bug damage and pill bugs, snails, things will eat them too, but still, no, I've done that. Mm-hmm.
Question from Daniel. A friend gifted me a unique white sapote variety, but it's growing in a compost soil mix. Are white sapotes typically sensitive to compost, and do you recommend fixing the soil like you would with citrus?
Well, everything's sensitive to compost soils. It probably won't kill a white sapote, just like it doesn't kill citrus, but it stunts them terribly. Or citrus, if you leave the compost around them, it stunts them for up to 10 years, is what I've seen. White sapote, I haven't grown enough of those. I've only grown a few in my life in the ground, and they didn't seem to be that stunted. Because this was back in the 80s, would grow them, and I didn't know anything about dirt in the 1980s, and we just left them in. Of course, the nurseries in those days didn't use that much compost either, so it's hard to judge how sensitive they actually are. But I would say, if you have a chance to get rid of the compost, go right ahead. It's worth it.
Question from Sam. Yeah, 2 questions. What are Gary's thoughts on mixing worm castings into a soil mix that is otherwise just minerals? I know he says mixing compost in a potting mix is a terrible idea, but I've heard him discuss mixing worm castings in a potting mix.
Well, nature's worms poop on top of the ground, not in the soil, so I would just leave it on top. I don't like any organic matter in the dirt, although if it's just a little bit, it's okay. I mean, farms till in compost because if they don't till it in, it just blows away to the next farm. So they have to till in compost, but they don't put much. So University of California went around farms 25 years ago and checked the organic content of the farm soil to make sure it wasn't 0. And they found it to be 1.1% by volume. So if you're only putting a little bit in the soil, it's not bad, but just don't get it very high, because the more you put in, the worse the airflow to the roots it can become. So, and it does, we don't know actual research, but anecdotal research has said that worm castings in the soil prevent or kill a lot of sucking bugs that might attack the plant. We haven't seen the research saying it does, but we've heard from many of our customers that it works. So.
Second question is, when watering a fruit tree in a container, should it be watered until it is, for lack of a better word, soupy and filled to the brim?
In a container?
Mm-hmm.
I like to water to make sure the water is, when the weather's hot like it is right now, 90 degrees, I like to really make sure there's ample water in that soil. Now, we know in our own potting soil, it takes about 1 inch of water to wet a foot of dirt. So if I'm thinking that it needs, if it's real dry, I'll sit there and wait till it's full about 1 inch of water before I'll stop watering, which may be a half gallon or so. I haven't really measured that. If it's a 10-inch wide round pot, 1 inch of water, I'll have to calculate that one out. And in a 15-gallon bucket, I'll make sure it's a couple inches of water before I stop watering, just to make sure it's enough for it to go through. And if there's not that much room on the pot, then I'll come back and water 2 or 3 times to make sure it's enough that goes through, gets it nice and moist. Again, too much water won't hurt it. So if you've done it right.
I'm not sure if this one is a question. It says, all my plants need to put out new leaves when I move them outside. Inside leaves never make it eventually.
Well, if you grow a leaf in darkness, it doesn't handle outdoor sun very well. Especially if it's getting hit by sun, just because it's thin and it's they said it's bigger and thinner versus smaller and thicker if it's grown in the sun, same plant.
Next question from Growing Together Nursery. What's the watering study that Gary refers to about watering lightly, giving better results versus deep watering?
We got one from an organization in Florida, but I don't recall. Next time I get an email from them every week, I will, if I can, is that on the
It's
YouTube
on the chat. Yeah.
I can probably find it next week. I keep on putting them in the trash once I read them. But that's the ones I've been getting for the 3 times a day watering. University of Florida, it must have been University of Florida, and a university in Brazil had similar results. So,
How do I purchase or select good rootstocks for grafting onto?
what kind of plant?
I don't know. That's the question.
There's so many rootstocks available. Depends on the plant.
Oops. From Garden Imperfect Plants, what would be the best location to plant lychee trees? Some of my lychee trees have leaves that are dried up at the edges. I have one in clay soil, not growing fast at all. They do receive full sun.
Well, lychees like full sun. They like a lot of heat when they're blooming for best cropping. If they're not growing, it's a soil issue. So we find that most lychees don't come in good soil. This is because we don't grow lychees much ourselves. When we have grown them, air layered plants put into our top pot, they've grown pretty fast. I mean, in a few years, a plant this big will be about 3 foot across and 2 foot tall. And if the spring is hot, so lychees like the temperature to be right around 90 degrees or even hotter when they're blooming. Because we've seen some really good blooms in fruit sets in the past. 1996, it was 100 degrees for like 3 or 4 days in April that year when the lychees were blooming, and every single lychee we had from this big to this big had fruit. We couldn't believe it. We'd never seen that before. Every single plant in our nursery had fruit because it was 100 degrees when they were blooming. And then about 4 years ago, the one in my backyard, we had a hot spring that year too. It was 80 degrees in February and 100. I think it hit 100 in April that year too. And the lychee was covered, just a 3-year-old plant, totally covered with fruit that year. If the springs are cool, no fruit. So a friend of mine who runs a nursery down in Vista told me that they stick all their long guns and lychee plants in their hot houses when they're blooming to get the temperature up. So it's a temperature thing. It may not even be a sunlight thing. If they're putting in a plastic hut, it's going to make it a little darker than full outside, but it's certainly warmer in there, and they have bees throughout their greenhouses, so they get the bees inside. So that the heat is a thing, and if it doesn't grow, it's a soil issue. I mean, when my first tries at lychees, the leaves always look burnt. And this is before we made our own potting soil. They always looked burnt, and the plants didn't grow. And that was just a soil problem. The fact that we're using ground up wood and bark as soil instead of real dirt, or real, quartz. Soil is basically made out of quartz.
Question from Dr. Ray. I bought a Venezuelan Ornico banana tree at your nursery a few years ago, and it is excellent in producing several bunches of bananas this summer. Will you be able to bring the Ornicos back in again?
Well, we don't know anyone with the Orinoco tree, so if you bring a few pups to us, we had someone bring a couple pups to us this year, so we sold those but didn't save any. So we've got to actually save a tree and plant it somewhere to get the pups off it. One of our tissue culture suppliers sometimes carries, every so often they do about 10 varieties of bananas. The disadvantage of tissue culture, it takes an extra year to grow a crop from a tissue culture than from a trunk sucker that we like to sell. So, but yeah, Orinoco is good. I want to get Manzano. That's another good one. I'd love to have an II if I can find one, which is a variegated banana.
From Daily Dose TV, what do you think of vermicast? Is it okay to mix it in the potting mix?
I think you're talking about worm poop.
I think, yeah.
No, it doesn't belong there. Again, worms poop on the surface; they don't poop in their tunnels. So I just leave it on the top of the soil.
From Sunset Cycling, blackberry plant question: how to trim plants to prepare for the next season? Should I trim all the canes to the ground?
Okay, question about blackberries. There's two kinds of blackberries out there. So in nature, most blackberries are called floricane. So blackberries, raspberries, some of the intermediate ones, what they do is during spring and summer, they grow new stems that don't fruit. They just grow the first year, and then these same stems fruit the second year. So, and generally they don't branch unless you pinch them or something. You cut them, they'll start branching. Otherwise, they're just long canes that come out. And then so a lot of farms do is they'll come down to about 6 or 8 foot. And then this whole thing makes berries the second year. So they got berries all over them. And then they die, and at the same time, the plant makes the canes for the following year. So, yeah, when these branch fruit, and they're usually dead by fall. So in fall, you can see the dead branches there, just cut them out and get rid of them. And you've got your new canes coming, and that's your next year's crop. So that's floricane style. And then you've got the primo cane style of growth where they'll make new stems that come up, and right around July or August, they start fruiting on the end. And they'll fruit until November on a primo cane stem. And then next year, the part that didn't fruit near the base will fruit. So that's a primo cane style of growth where the first year they make the canes, they fruit. And then the next year they fruit down here. A lot of people say the best berries on these are the summer fall crop. So in the winter, you just get rid of everything. You don't need it. But you can get, these do start bearing fruit sometimes as early as February in that following year. So you might as well keep them. Whatever part didn't fruit, keep it, and it'll start bearing early next year. And then once you see all the branches on it, then you cut it off, and it's always making new stems. So that's the primo cane. So primo cane has its advantages. It's usually called everbearing, although it's not quite everbearing. And then the floricane is really spring bearing, although it's spring into summer for most of them. So it's like May or June through July and to August for the floricane style.
On the floricane, since the fruit is on the bottom when it's growing.
Well, it can make it over the whole thing.
Oh,
They usually say it's the last 6 to 8 feet that bear fruit. So if you kept it 12 foot long, the last 6 or 8 feet will bear. If you keep it 6 to 8 foot long, the whole thing bears. So you might as well shorten it up. It's easier.
the question I have is, can you bend the cane over and force it into the ground and make a new plant?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
that's how they're propagated. So a lot of blackberries blackberries primarily are propagated by just taking the stem, burying it in the dirt. Wherever it's buried, touches the ground, it roots. So, yes.
When it comes to pruning, I was wondering if you can give a quick tip on how to prune, because apparently I just cut whatever was long. And one year I have a mulberry tree. I had thousands of fruit. I mean, a lot. And this year I probably had maybe even not 100. So I think I just didn't prune it right. So
Mhm.
what's the like, I can't tell which is for the leaves and which is for the fruit, I guess.
Well, mulberries, I haven't pruned all the different mulberries. I think though that most of them should be similar. So mulberries fruit off of wood that just grew. So if you cut it too far back, so let's say you have a mulberry tree, that's the trunk, and then it grows this branch this year. If you cut it back and you leave a little section of branch, whatever grows from the section that grew the previous year will then have a branch that flowers and fruits. Mulberries do that, figs do the same thing. You leave a little bit of what grew last year, and whatever grows off of it will have flowers and fruit on it. If you cut it down to older wood, it'll grow a branch, but it won't bear for a year. So if you cut it too far back, then you don't get fruit on that growth. It's got to have a little remnant, or you can leave the whole thing, and then you have a huge mulberry plant that grows branches with fruit all over it, or you can just cut it down, leave a little bit of it.
It just seems like this year I was getting too many straight sticks, which made me think I must have cut the wrong things.
Or cut it too much off.
Too much off. Yeah.
If there's no fruit on it, then you cut too much off.
Yeah. And I have a peach that has never ever given peach tree that has never ever given me one fruit.
No, 90% of peach trees won't fruit in our area just because they
Oh.
don't get the cold they need to flower.
So that's another takeout, you think?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can wait. Every so often we get a winter that's cold enough, but that's not like it. Like I grew Santa Rosa plums on a hilltop location for 20 years. I got one crop. That's not worth it. They were good, but only one crop because the hilltop locations stay warmer than the canyon areas do.
Just another question about pruning. I got a Jan Boyce avocado tree here, and it's been growing great. It's really happy. I'm trying to prune it to grow on one trunk, but some of the branches is like bigger than the trunk. Is there like any pruning I should do on that, or just let it be?
Well, there's no rules. It's nice not to waste energy on more than one trunk, but if the tree has two uprights, go with it. Just treat them like you would one trunk. But if it already made them, I wouldn't waste its energy and cut them off. That's still a lot of energy in those stems to hold more crop. But yeah, the horizontal branches tend to fruit and the vertical ones tend to not to fruit. So you want more horizontal rather than vertical. But if you've got 2 or 3 verticals already, you might as well use them. So.
I have a white mission mulberry, and it's now about 8 feet all the way around, and there's nothing on it. Should I cut them down very low so
Yes.
that the new branches will have
So it's a white mulberry?
white mission
White mission mulberry?
mulberry?
I don't know that one. Now there's a white Persian mulberry.
Well, maybe I got it from you. Whatever
Okay.
you have.
So probably
it's
a white
white.
Persian mulberry. And what was the question again? How
It's
much you
now
should?
about 6 feet big all around.
Mhm.
Should I cut them down since they bloom on the newer branches?
Yeah, if you don't want it to be that big, you can trim it back, and then trimming it back sometimes forces it, well, it will force it to regrow, and sometimes when it regrows, it has fruit on it. Now, they do that better the older they get. So the thicker the branches are, you cut them back, they flower and fruit again on whatever tries to grow. Because I've done that on mulberry in my yard where several times a year I'm cutting off 10 foot of growth because it grows so fast, and then whatever regrows makes another crop, and then you cut that back and then it grows another crop. It keeps on doing it. On a young tree, it doesn't reflower. You know, it's got to be a little older plant, so it may not do it. Yeah, I might as well cut it back. I used to take a chainsaw to my mulberry at least twice a year, if not more. Because it would, and every time I pruned it, I was cutting off 10 to 12 foot of growth twice a year. It was just crazy growth.
You do it now?
Yeah. Well, summertime, anytime you do a pruning in the summer, there's time to regrow. Once you do it in the fall, it won't regrow. A lot of things don't regrow after that, although I think mulberries are an exception. I think they grow anytime it's above 50 degrees. I think they just keep growing. Because we'll see them leaf out really, really early when it's still cold.
Really weird. My navel orange. One day I had white flowers, little green oranges, big green oranges, little orange, and big oranges. All 5 things were on the same part of the tree.
Well, that just means it's had a number of stresses during the year. So the main stress is drought stress, but heat stress, cold stress, any of those things can trigger another bloom. So it means you're stressing your tree a little bit. It's not a big deal. I mean,
What's the best way of dripping water around the trees? I can stand there all day.
well, yeah, so ideally it's you water in the same spot every time you water, because the roots can't follow you around the yard. If you water, like I had a lady said, I water here 1 week and then I water there the next week and then I water there the next week. Plants can't follow you. They'll grow roots where they get water all the time. So you've got to pick a spot and say, okay, I'll water it here. Every time I water it right here, and then it'll get the water better.
I've been walking around it and getting tipsy. So I'll just stand in one spot. Okay.
Best in one spot.
Okay.
Or whatever you've been doing is.
Okay.
Question from Rick to Tube. Any suggestions on options to prevent crows, birds, rats, and Japanese fig beetles from eating figs off the tree?
Well, the green fig beetles are certainly the worst. I've got to make one of these to have here, I think. But the best way to stop the green fig beetle is to get a gallon or half-gallon liter plastic bottle that had water or something in it, or juice, and cut it in half. So you take that half and then you cut the top off and you invert it. So it's a funnel. And a friend of mine who made one of these just put a few holes in there and put wire in and just made a hanger out of that. And he puts about 2 ounces of grape juice in there. And he showed a picture that he can get like 30 or 40 fig beetles trapped in that container every day. They love the fragrance of grape juice. But you can put a rotten fig in there, anything that's sweet will attract them, and they just fall in there. They can't fly out. They can fall through the hole, but they can't fly out of it. And one customer said for some reason their slope of the roof, they hit it, they fall into the gutter and they can't get out. He says he can collect 100 fig beetles in there every day, feeds them to his chickens. So anyway, the fig beetles, that's one way to catch them. Rats and mice, the first round of defense is always bubble gum. If they eat it, it kills them. If they don't eat it, then you got to use a different kind of trap. Squirrels are the hardest. Like when I had possums, I have a hard trap out, put anything in there, and then you trap them and drive them few miles away and let them go. But with squirrels, well, you can trap squirrels and let them go too. But they're one of the hardest critters to control because they can climb over anything.
Can you buy them off with enough food where they won't pick on your garden too much?
Well, I'm sure there's something that they would like to eat more than.
Well, they love peanuts, roasted peanuts.
Yeah.
They'll come take them out. Yeah.
Yeah.
They like them much up persimmons too, but
Mhm.
if one guy were steady enough, maybe he can't depend on it elsewhere. Sorry.
And we've done that in our yard, got some peanuts and put them out. I don't know, our squirrels still preferred the bird seed. Oh, yeah.
My neighbor had some doves and some other stuff in his backyard that the rats would get into the cage and eat the doves and kill them and stuff. He used to put out Irish Spring soap, and that seemed to keep the rats and mice away from what he was trying to protect. So
still
you
make
might try that.
Irish Spring soap.
Yeah, you might try that.
Yeah, we've heard that in the past for deer too. They don't like the human smell. I guess that's a deodorant that humans wear a lot, so they think it's a person standing there.
Really, his story, we, at the school garden that I run over at Red Hill, we never got broccoli or corn or anything out of the garden because these animals would come and eat everything. So this ingenious lady found a box, an electronic box. And this box, I put it under the table in the garden. And we have never had another problem. We had corn this year, we had broccoli, we had all our vegetables. The garden was completely undisturbed. I found dead rats everywhere. But it gives off a kind of a sonic signal, and these animals can't take it.
Do you hear it yourself?
They're gone. I don't know what, I'll get the name of it and give to Gary, but,
Can you hear it?
huh?
Can you hear it yourself?
Oh yeah, it does give off a signal. It gives off a sonic signal, and then it just totally disturbs the animals. They will not come in the garden. I don't know what the deal is, but
Please let him know. I would like one.
yeah, everybody needs one really because the kids never received anything. I had pumpkins with holes in them where the rats would eat them, and all the broccoli was gone, corn, just the cob was left.
You can get it from Amazon.
Oh, you can get it from Amazon, yeah, I'm sure. But it does work. It really does work.
My only concern is how if you have other animals like dogs or cats, how that's going to impact them.
It's tough.
So that's just something to think about.
Well,
Well, I don't have any, but how about neighbors?
Well, that's their issue.
they won't do it. It only works after sunset. From sunset to early morning is when all the animals come to eat your garden. And it's the birds during the daytime, and then it's the possums and skunks and all these other guys at night.
From Matt Bowen, do you know a good replacement to control scale bugs on Sweet Bay Loris bushes / trees? I used to use the product with imidacloprid, but this is now outlawed in Southern California.
Well, if it's a sweet bay tree, which is Laurus nobilis, we treat it with an oil spray because we've gotten them in from growers covered in a brown scale, and we just hit them with all seasons. It's a mineral oil, just sprayed it on, and one treatment seemed to do a good job with it. We haven't seen them come back. Now, there are some scales out there that are have gotten immune to oils. And if that's the case, you'll have to use something stronger. In fact, I brought in, a lot of our good products that our state took off the market. They're trying to take care of stupid people, I guess. They think we're all stupid. So some of the strongest pesticides that are still on the market are the ones like this. And this class of pesticides are called synthetic pyrethroids. which are the pesticides that are usually used in your house. So Black Flag, what's the other company? Raid. They're all synthetic pyrethroids. So around mammals, very non-toxic. So these are the most potent things we still have. It's like, I don't recognize any of the products. I mean, I don't see any of the products we used to sell on the market anymore, at least for California. So we're kind of limited what we have nowadays. But yeah, oil first on the scale.
From Shecky Diamond, can you teach us about passion fruit vine?
That's next week's class.
Oh, okay. Listen to next week's class.
Very easy. Pasture, you just give them a place to grow and they'll take over the yard.
From Sam, I have a strong long stem around 140 centimeter on a 2-year-old cordis rose in a pot. Is it okay to add more than one air layering ball on the same stem? Thanks a lot.
Say the whole question again.
I have a strong long stem around 140 centimeters on a 2-year-old cordis rose in a pot. Is it okay to add more than one air layering ball?
I've never air layered in my life. I would expect it to work though. I don't see why it wouldn't.
On the same stem, wouldn't it cut off the, like...
No. Well, the water goes through the middle of the stem and then you're cutting the outside bark, which is the downflow. Should work if they're not too close together. It should work.
Okay.
I would expect it to work, put it that way.
From Re-M, Gary, listening to your talks about potting soil has been a big epiphany for me. What has been an epiphany you've had about plants in the last few years? No epiphanies?
No, I don't think I've had anything happen the last few years, maybe 30 years ago, but
I'm trying to grow some tomatoes, and I think I've got blossom end rot, but they've blossomed long ago. So this is on the fruit. It looks almost like a cancer or something on it.
well, if it's on the bottom end of the fruit and it's hard and brown,
Yeah, it's not on the bottom. It's on the side.
well, that's a sunburn usually.
Okay.
If the fruit's exposed to the sun, it usually sunburns. It's just kind of a brownish, lighter spot that starts rotting after a while.
On a green.
Yeah, this is a dark green, kind of leathery. It looks like the pictures of blossom end rot, but it's not on the end. It's on the side.
Not sure. I'd still put sunburn as number one choice, but I'd have to see that.
Is it worth the time it takes to undo root knots in the root ball of blueberry plants?
You mean tangled roots? Is that what he's talking about?
He just said maybe like the nematodes, root knots,
Oh,
or maybe if it's root bound in a pot.
well, generally root boundness is overrated. We don't usually do much with root bound roots at all. The plants we want to make sure don't have wound up roots are shade trees or big trees. I mean, you don't want, if you're expecting your tree to grow 40, 50 foot, you don't want circling roots at the base of that plant because, well, most trees aren't bothered by circling roots. Certain trees, especially eucalyptus, they said eucalyptus don't make new roots from the trunk. So if they have a circle in their roots, that circle is going to always be there. And it's like a spring in the ground, and the tree tends to fall out of the ground and kill somebody or damage property or, crush a car. And that's the problem. So any tree that grows big, you don't want roots that circle. Now, occasionally circling roots will cut off the circulation of the trunk and they'll kill the tree just by the circle roots getting bigger around the trunk. But usually they say that happens when the trees are only this big. They make a circle root in a small container and you don't know it's there until it's too late. Then it just causes the tree to break or strangle to death in its later life. But most trees have the ability to make new roots straight out, so it's not as big a deal as we used to think it was. But and for a blueberry plant, I don't think I'd worry about that at all. Generally, fruiting plants of any kind, if they have circles in their roots, it's not a big deal. I mean, if the plant falls over, it's not going to hurt anything. So.
They said that the Heritage Park Library, we had very stunted trees, and they said that was a result of planted root-bound trees.
I don't know.
They were pretty strong for a long time.
Yeah, I don't know about that. It's probably compost-grown trees that
Maybe tree.
I don't think root boundness stops many things. I remember my dad planted a tree that was in a box container for 10 years and put it in the ground, and it just boom, it just took off. It was totally root bound, but it took off and just did real well. Yeah.
When Gary refers to the book, what book is he talking about? What is the title and the author?
Book.
Did you mention a book that you got information on?
I don't recall saying the book.
You use a lot of books, but all different books.
Yeah, I don't really. I mean, of course, for generations, the book we would refer to would be the Sunset Western Garden book as our Bible, but we no longer consider it that in that same, in that same stature. But yeah, for
The book that I'm reading right now is 40 Centuries of Agriculture in China, Japan, and Korea. And I'm just fascinated by the book. It was written in 1906. So for 40 centuries, they fed everybody in their country on sustainable agriculture using green manures and human manure and stuff like that. And that's a fascinating book for this agriculture you're talking about, sustainable agriculture. That's going on as a big movement in the country now. And, I have another question for you. You were talking about perithium.
pyrethrum.
Yeah. Can you use your own chrysanthemum flowers for making perithium?
Well, the problem is they've been using that for over 100 years now, so the bugs are pretty much immune to it.
Okay.
So they, the synthetic pyrethroids are just man-made copies of the original pyrethrum with a few molecules changed.
Mm-hmm.
So they said white flies will become immune to one of the brands of pyrethroid chemicals in about 2.5 years.
Oh.
So they have to keep developing new versions of it that they're not immune to. So the original one is still being made.
Yeah, but, I eat chrysanthemums. I eat the leaves.
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed after I had taken most of the leaves off, this beautiful flower comes on the top. And I was thinking that you could take them off and put them in alcohol and take out the perithium that's in the flower. It's the same way you would do marijuana. If you were using marijuana, you would put alcohol or vodka in the marijuana, and then you evaporate the vodka off, and you're left with the residue in the bottom.
Just be careful if you do that with tobacco. It's really toxic. So
Yeah.
I mean, the sprays we use the most, period, and the ones we recommend the most, minerals would be one.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of other plant oils that people use too. And then spinosad would be the other product that we use a lot of. Those two oils, which kill mostly sucking bugs like spider mites and mealybugs and whitefly, and then the spinosads, which controls caterpillars, beetles, green grasshoppers, and thrips. And that covers pretty much everything we need to cover. The oil also does a good job on mildew, which we had a lot of this year. So,
How do you control ants when Amdro isn't working?
so Amdro, is the only product we can get that works well. And if it stops working, like it eventually does, if you use it for years after year after year, then you have to find a product with a different killing agent in it. So Amdro there's a lot of ant baits out there that are cornmeal with vegetables, which are really good food for the ants. And then they put in a type of poison that'll kill the ants, not immediately, but after a few days, so they can kill off the entire nest. And there's different brands out there. I don't have access to different brands. Orange County Farm Supply, I think, carries 2 other brands of ant killers that are on the same principle. And they can tell you what they have over there. We're trying to get a hold of one called Extinguish, which is different than the one we use, but our distributors that I know of don't carry it. It's advertised in California for the orchards, but I don't have access to that particular one. So if you can find that one, or see what Orange County Farm Supply has, or the other stores, if they have ant baits that have different poisons in them. So.
Why doesn't Gary promote worm tea or castings?
Worms aren't native to North America, so the plants naturally here aren't used to it, although they are native to Asia and Europe, where most of our plants come from. So I guess it would work. Now, worm tea I don't promote at all. So worm tea was a huge thing in the 1990s. There was an award given to a company that created worm tea kiosks. So all the nurseries had a worm tea kiosk, and we add water and sugar and worm poop and make this worm tea out of it, and people would buy it for like $10 for a gallon, and nobody saw any results, anything great. So we stopped carrying it after a few years. The companies that did the kiosk went out of business because nobody saw great results with it. The problems you have with worm tea is that when you're making worm tea, you have to aerate it very well, or else all that stuff in the water will start decomposing anaerobically and create poison. The problem is when you put it in the bottle and you take it home, and if you don't keep aerating it, the oxygen just goes out of it. And sometimes if you water a plant with that too heavily, there's no oxygen in the water, the plant rots or the roots suffocate and die. So you have to be careful using worm tea to aerate it as you're applying it, to make sure there's oxygen in it, because worm tea by itself will be oxygen free. I mean, the irrigation water we use by law has to have 5 to 7 parts per million of oxygen in it. So when you water your lawn, you don't kill it. And worm tea, there's no rules on that one that it's got to have oxygen in it. So you have to be careful with it. Anytime you store water in a container, it can lose a lot of its oxygen. So you have to be careful. So.
What is your recommendation for seed starting mix and fertilizer for starts? Also container soil mix for root crops like carrots.
Our top pot didn't bring a sampler. It works fine for root crops. I grow them in that. But anything soft, and soft soils generally have a lot of sand in them and don't have gravel in them. So sandy soil, even clay soil for root crops, is not very long root crops, but sand would be ideal. For seed starting, we like to use something sterile. So if you combine one of the best seed mixes, and you can use the same thing for cuttings, would be a mixture of peat moss and sponge rock, half and half. So if I have real expensive seeds, I'll just mix up a batch of that, peat moss and sponge rock. And about 50-50 because they're both considered sterile. Pumice can work. Pumice mined out of the side of a hill is considered sterile medium too. But something sterile. A friend of mine who used to grow plants for farms, start seeds for farms, would use sterilized sand. They would take the sand every time they used it and steam sterilize it again before they used it to grow another set of crops for the farmers.
Yeah.
So something sterile is ideal, although it doesn't. A lot of the big seeds don't have to be sterile.
Our garden was full of river rock and fabric, which we recently removed. We were going to rototill the soil. Do you suggest doing that or something else to bring the life back to the soil?
Well, nature doesn't do any of that. If you cover the ground with mulch, organic mulch, it'll come to life. Nature doesn't till stuff. Now, the main reason to till, the main advantage to tilling the ground would be to destroy, if you wanted a garden here and you've got trees throughout your yard, it'll be full of tree roots. There's no way you can garden it. So tilling it would temporarily get rid of all the tree roots and the big roots that are competing with your vegetable crop. That'd be the main reason to till, is to get rid of roots. But if you don't have any roots in there, there's no real reason to till. If you just cover with organic stuff, it'll make the soil quite alive.
I know it's Irvine waste disposal or whatever can give you all the mulch or compost you want. You can bring a trailer and they'll just give it to you.
Mm-hmm.
So if you had the choice, would you put compost on top of the sand or mulch or both or what?
Well, they can be the same thing. Compost just means it's been under fast decomposition, which doesn't have to be. I mean, they said nature's main way of decomposing is not with bacteria in a compost pile. It's with the fungus that naturally occurs in the ground. So we stopped using compost pile at our house 20 years ago, and we just chopped things up like we did before and threw them on the ground, and they disappeared, I would say, faster than the compost ever did. So nature has its own way of decomposing. You don't need the compost. You don't have to buy it as compost. Just chopped up good stuff is fine.
I am very interested.
The one advantage composting would have would be it kills a lot of seeds.
I'm very interested in winter sweet plants. Can you get some in your nursery to sell? These are very fragrant plants that bloom in the winter months.
I don't know that plant.
Winter sweet? You can look up the botanical.
And I don't recall having things that bloom that time of year.
Have you ever grown gobo?
I don't know what that is either.
I think it's the burdock root.
I think so. You could get it at Mitsuo. It's
Yeah, we've carried the seeds. We've carried the seeds before, but Kitazawa has them. The seeds, and yeah, the root got really big.
do you have to put them in something that has like 2 feet of
Yeah.
permeable soil?
Yeah. We grew it in top pot. And yeah, it got like that. Yeah. Winter sweet is Chimonanthus praecox or Japanese allspice.
Can't say I've seen it offered here. Does it say what zone it grows in? Or where it's native to?
It's native to China.
Most of China is more temperate than we are. Some of it's not.
Zone 7 through 9.
Yeah, zone 7 through 9. So we're zone 10, 10B, 11. It may or may not do what it's supposed to here if we don't have the weather it needs. But yeah, I've never carried it.
What are the best books to read currently on plants?
I haven't found one. I mean, the references I use I do use Sunset Western Garden book maybe 10% of the time. I do have big reference books for tropical fruit written by, can't remember the lady's name now, in Florida. And I do use books written by Michael Durr, who's a plantsman from University of, I think it was University of Georgia. But the internet usually covers most things nowadays.
Oops, I think. Let's see. I have read about the Oregon giant earthworm. Is Gary positive that there are no native worms in North America?
Well, they said that the ice age, the glaciers wiped them all out. Now, I don't think the glaciers went to the coastline of Oregon or the coastline of California, so there may have been some survivors there, but they said the last ice age, which was what, about 10,000, 12,000 years ago, covered most of the continent of North America, and that's why we don't have earthworms throughout most of North America. There are no earthworms because of the ice sheet. But I have read about the giant earthworms in Oregon. That might have been an isolated valley, perhaps.
Is Corsican mint a good ground cover? Is it fragrant? And is it okay to walk on?
Well, Corsican mint is a decent walking surface, although you can't really play on it. You can step on it now and then. But in the days when we had winters, now we haven't had much of a winter for the last 3 or 4 years, our Corsican mint used to totally disappear in the winter and then would grow back when it got warm again. So if you live in a colder spot in Orange County, then it's going to disappear on you. If you live on a hilltop or in an area that stays warm like Costa Mesa, it probably will stay around. Now, I don't know how long it's supposed to live. It's a lot of perennials like mint plants have a set lifespan of maybe 3 to 5 years, but I don't know. I haven't grown it long enough to tell you how long it's supposed to live. I mean, most ground covers, 10 years is about it, unless you go with the juniper. Or an ice plant seems to live longer than a decade, but a lot of the ground cover plants that we've seen, like rosemary, lantana, myoporum, after 10 years, they look kind of trashy, and most people pull them out and start over with a different plant. And mint, don't like. My mother grew thyme, looked great for 3 years, and it all died. So we know thyme doesn't live that long either. So I don't know about mint, how many years you'll get out of it.
Did you say your mint dies after a few years?
No, dies in the winter cold. If you're using it as a ground.
Well, I live near here. My mint has lived for probably almost 50 years, same spot.
Okay, so maybe it does. I haven't grown it very long, so.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
Since now I have to go pull out 2 of my fruit trees, now I'm wondering about my pear tree, because that has given me maybe 2
What kind
pears.
of pear?
I don't know.
Pears
I
were
bought
still,
it from the same guy. Now I'm thinking he shouldn't have sold any of these if he was in Irvine.
So pears were still a little bit uneasy about, because apples, all the apples produce here.
Yeah.
Not all the apples make a big fruit, but all the apples produce here. And we think all pears can produce here too, but because of their seasons, they don't make a good fruit. Like when I was a kid, my dad grew Bartlett pears, which have no business being in this area. He used to get fruit every year, but the fruit was this big. And the reason for that is the pears ripen in summer. Apples, the apples that ripen in summer have the same problem, but most apples ripen in the fall. So like you grow a Fuji apple here, it doesn't bloom in April like it does in Oregon. It blooms like May, June here. But because it ripens in the fall, it still gets full size because it's got 5 months to develop, whereas pears don't. So a lot of the pears wake up late ripen early, get no size. But we're still working, we're still wanting to see it more because like 4 years ago, we had a real good crop on Asian pears. Year after that, zero. Then last year, not much, and this year, slightly better. And what happened 4 years ago is it hit 80. That was the year it hit 80 degrees in February and 100 degrees in April, and they bloomed in April. Whereas the last 3 years, they bloomed about May or June because there was no early heat. So we think the pears might do better if we had earlier heat, like they do in inland high deserts. A lot of times pears are on the high desert, or they used to be, and that would be early heat.
Mine doesn't hardly even blooms. It's just, I mean, I'm so disappointed.
Well, when I grew pear trees in the 80s, when we had cold winters and hot summers, and it would take some pears about 4 years to start blooming.
Yeah, I've had more than 4. Yeah.
So
it's a pull out.
yeah, well, yeah, the pears just haven't been super reliable for us. There's a few pears that have been very reliable. The hood pear from Florida, and the Kiefer pear, which is from the deep south somewhere, I think. But those have been fairly reliable. The rest of the pear is not as reliable. Although most of the pears, if you get them to grow, are really good tasting.
Yeah, I think I might have had only 2, and they were very small. I just thought maybe I was doing something wrong, but
Yeah, we're not a good
yeah.
reliable pear area. So.
Apricot. Can you grow apricots here?
Well, apricot wise, we haven't had great weather for a long time, but the tropic gold apricot is the lowest chill apricot we've seen. And that, like this year on tropic gold, we got just a few fruit. It wasn't, our winter, it was so mild this year. Even though we had the chill hours, it just was mild. So I just had a few fruit on, although at a local orchard, their apricot tree had a decent crop, something you can actually harvest. But here in our nursery, just a few fruit formed. So we didn't have much of a winter for that.
So I got a Valencia Pride mango tree from another nursery. It's doing all right, but not as well as the plants I've gotten here. So I was wondering, do you plan on carrying mango trees soon, or?
We're investigating different ways to get them, but it's tough. One of the problems we've had, so in the past, when we had a nursery in South County, I used to get them from a nursery in San Diego County who got them shipped in from Florida. So we've asked about shipping directly to Orange County. Florida nurseries do not like shipping to Orange County. They said Orange County's ag department is much more strict, and they often reject the entire order and send it back to Florida. So they refuse to sell stuff to Orange County nurseries. But you'll send it to San Diego. So if you know anyone in San Diego, you just ask them to buy it for you or ship it to their house, and then it's kind of odd. Yeah, it's kind of an interesting problem we have.
We do have some fruit trees that actually produce well, but we're in stiff competition with squirrels and birds. So it's just a matter of like 1 week and they're all gone. Any suggestions?
Well, squirrels are the hardest. You either have to trap them and have a harder live traps, or you have to kill them.
Right.
They're just hard to control. Birds are easier because they can be scared, or if you put netting around it, they hate that. But there's bird scare tape that they don't like for quite a while, and if you get a really realistic looking snake, that'll stop them for at least a week, sometimes 2. It's a fake snake.
All these decoys, so it's good to remove him and bring him back just for a couple weeks. Then it sounds
Pardon?
like sometimes they have the fake the decoy owls and things like that. So maybe just kind of
Rotate them.
rotate them.
Owls in my yard didn't work for more than a day. The snake worked for a couple of weeks.
Oh.
They didn't like.
Where'd you get that?
Well, my original one, which worked the best, I got from Disneyland 40 years ago. It was, it's like this big, made out of rubber. It was really realistic looking. It really worked well. Now I don't know if I have them in stock right now. I'll have to see. It's a blow-up snake that's just, painted onto a beach ball plastic. And that works decently, but if you get something really realistic looking, and they probably make them somewhere. It worked. I had 12 fig trees at my first house, and it was like an aviary every summer. Put out that snake, and I didn't hear a bird for 2 weeks. Didn't even hear one. They just stayed away. They didn't like that thing at all. But I moved it from tree to tree, so it's like it was alive. But they hated that one, so that one worked quite well for birds.
Great.
But squirrel is hard. A lot of people who have orchards in their backyard get these squirrel traps that are inside a tube, so you don't see the squirrel when it's dying. But
The problem, if you trap them and kill them the day after your trash collection, you have to keep it in your trash until the next week. Either that or maybe take it somewhere and throw it somewhere else. Oh, no. No. They're too big to be in compost. I don't know. No.
maybe if you throw them in the middle, of the street, the crows will take them away within a few hours.
Yeah, I got some crows in my neighborhood that don't please anything.
Oh yeah, they eat everything dead on the street.
The squirrels are pretty big. They would need.
No, we see them picking at possums in the street and squirrels in the street. The crows get it.
I had a skunk that died on pole pretty close by, and within a day or so, it was gone. The squirrels were all, the ravens were all grown.
Well, in my neighborhood, I've driven over a dead skunk for days. And finally, I got on and pushed it over to the side.
It's 11:15. Do you wanna?
Yeah, we can stop.
Are you going to have